and just had a really good time. Hello everyone, welcome to the 2020 TFA annual meeting. And it's a little bit odd this year because we're doing a virtual meeting, but at least we are getting to have a meeting. And I'm here live from the Rock Island State Park. We just finished up with a master logger class with Wayne Clatterbuck leading us today, and we had some really good speakers. I got to meet a lot of loggers and just had a really good time. But we also have a lot of good speakers for this meeting as well, and looking forward to hearing what each one has to say. And just want to thank Candace and the team, all of her folks, for putting this together and all the hard work everybody's done to help get ready for this meeting this year. And everything's so different because we're having a different time cause of the coronavirus. And but anyway, we're looking forward to all the speakers today, and talk with you soon.
Good morning, everyone. Your favorite lawyer's here. He may be your favorite because he's free. And I've been asked to give the antitrust admonition so that we do not, unintentionally of course, violate any federal or state law at our virtual meeting today. I've reviewed the great program that Candace has put together for us, and I find that it is both informative and educational, all of which is perfectly okay. In fact, with the crazy year that we've all experienced since we last met, it's especially useful and fortuitous that the next speaker is a doctor. Even if he is a veterinarian, I can speak firsthand that nobody in my memory has advocated for and supported the forestry industry more than has Commissioner Dr. Charlie Hatcher. I do want to warn you, however, that certain subjects, such as prices, market shares, supply chains, etc., should not be discussed by our members, either on or off the record at this virtual meeting, just like they should not be discussed at face-to-face TFA meetings. I will be listening throughout this meeting, and I will not hesitate to sound the gong should any conversation drift toward a prohibited area. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Tennessee Commissioner of Agriculture Charlie Hatcher, and thanks for having me for the Tennessee Forestry Association Annual Conference. And I wanted to go through a few topics here. So the first one is the state of the state. And so, you know, I learned early on as commissioner of the importance of forestry to the state. And we've got a really supportive governor, Governor Bill Lee, as his rural initiative. And that's based on, as you go out in these rural counties, you see two things. You see agriculture and you see trees. So you got agriculture and forestry. And so as this pandemic started, we soon realized the importance, or the increased importance, of agriculture and forestry, and the impact of the pandemic had on those industries. And so in 2019, the trade wars had significant impact on ag and forestry economies. A big decrease. We lost some exports that impacted commodity prices. And then in 2020, with the pandemic, we saw further depression of the ag and forestry economies. And you know, the ag and forestry economies from the start, in my view, were leaders during the pandemic. We were considered critical infrastructure. The industry, both agriculture and forestry industries, took it upon themselves to continue their work just as they always do. You know, we're accustomed to hardships in agriculture and forestry, and it was just another one of those that we persevered through. So thank you for what you've done for supplying the fiber for all Tennesseans and for the world. And so the state of agriculture and forestry industries now, it's, you know, it hasn't been that good, but moving forward, we got the support of the Financial Stimulus Accountability Group and Governor Bill Lee. So we were able to get, they released $55 million in federal CARES money for us for a program to help ag and forestry businesses who were negatively impacted by coronavirus. And so if you could show a coronavirus loss or expense, or you could show an impact or a way you could help the supply chain, because the supply chains were impacted by the pandemic, you could apply for that money. And the forestry industry ended up receiving, or we think, or at least allocated, of that 55 million, 20% or so is for the forestry industry, which is a fantastic thing. And so we realize the importance of the forestry industry, and we realize the importance of the economic recovery, and we realize the importance of forestry in rural communities. We have within the Tennessee Department of Agriculture, we have the Business Development Group that's headed by Keith Harrison. We have Mr. Neil Owens, who is a business consultant for the forestry industry, and he worked hand in hand with the forestry industry in the applications for the CFA B, the Corona and Ag and Forestry Business Fund application process, and that has turned out very well. So we're excited about that. Stay tuned. Those monies need to be expended before the end of the year, and we think we'll look back on this, and this will be a historical moment in time, as this amount of money will have a huge impact, I think, on the supply chain, on the ag and forestry industries for generations to come. Now, as part of the rural initiative and as part of rural economic development, we're always concerned about workforce development. And so within the forestry sector, you guys are a big part of that. And so the Tennessee Division of Forestry has been working with workforce development. We're tied in with the rural initiative at the governor's office, and we know that there's a lot of potential for workforce development, both for loggers, for the forestry industry in general, and everywhere in the system in between. So we realize that's an opportunity, and you're going to see some movement in that area as well. And I wanted to touch on the Tennessee Ag Enhancement Program and how effective that's been. And as part of that, some of those funds go to TFA for the Master Logger Program. And that's so beneficial because that's an educational program that education is one thing you can't take away from somebody, and the loggers are so important. And so we continue to fund that, and we'll leverage that program, and we think that helps the industry as a whole. And as we begin to analyze the industry, we can see that the Ag Enhancement Program for master loggers really pays off. So, you know, the Division of Forestry, the mission is to conserve, protect, and enhance Tennessee forests by assisting landowners and meeting those objectives. And that's what the Division of Forestry does every day. But I want to take a second here to also to tell you what impressed me when I became Commissioner of Agriculture. And it really should be, you know, part of that, the Division of Forestry is over half of our department, really, in the number of employees. But right away, I realized the impact they have, and was so excited to see the revenue they generate from sale of timber of state forests across the state, how they effectively manage and conserve and promote forest sustainability and health, and also the training opportunities that have been provided to us on out-of-state firefighting efforts has been tremendous. It's allowed us or the division as a unit to be better trained, better prepared, with even a smaller force. I believe we have better equipment and better training than we did years ago. So they're to be commended for that, and it's a great thing. So when I saw those revenue checks coming across my desk, both from sale of timber and also the money that was generated for out-of-state firefighting efforts, it's a wonderful thing. And you usually don't see that in any other department. So I just wanted to mention that. And impressive also, and I have to mention this, is as former state veterinarian, the tremendous emergency preparedness efforts within Division of Forestry. The incident command structure, we used that when I was state veterinarian and was fighting the bird flu, and that's a great thing. And the Division of Forestry can help us and help the state on emergency preparedness for not only fighting forest fires but other things. And so we're going to rely on their experience in the incident command structure and emergency preparedness for a lot of different things, for animal health, potentially for the pandemic, and the lessons they can teach us will be invaluable moving forward. So I wanted to mention those things. So another thing that's very impressive to me is the seedling, the nursery program, where 5 million seedlings are produced every year for landowners to use. That just helps promote or helps support the forestry industry and the growth of trees, and we're delighted about that. And you know, in this day of greenhouse gases, there's a lot. You see a lot of that on television these days. Trees are the answer, or growing live plants are the answer to that, as they sequester carbon out of the atmosphere. And so it's a wonderful thing to be able to have a forest that pulls that carbon out of the atmosphere and at the same time is productive and helps provide the fiber for Tennesseans. So what a great thing. And our partnership that we have to conserve, you know, there's a renewed interest not only rural forests but urban forests. We're beginning to, we have been looking and working with cities as well on forestry projects, and I'm glad to see that happen. So as we move forward, everything that we do really depends upon the future depends upon the youth of this country. And so we want to continue to educate, and you guys are part of that, educate the consumer on where their fiber comes from, where their food comes from, and the hard work that goes into it. And together we can do that. And so I realize that this annual convention looks different. You can't meet in person, and there's a lot of virtual conventions, but I hope it goes well, and I hope it's a productive meeting for you guys.
Hello, this is Adam Taylor, the Wood Products Extension Specialist at the University of Tennessee. And if I could see your face, I'm sure I'd see a lot of familiar faces. I've enjoyed being a member of TFA and interacting with those folks. For those of you who don't know me, I'm interested in the industry that we're all in one way or another involved with. And I feel that wood is good, and I'm trying to look to a positive future for the wood industry. I think there's a lot of things to be positive about. But these days, 2020, we've had a couple of recent events that have really knocked us back as an industry, as a society in general. But the wood industry is suffering too. And Candace instructed me to find the positives, so I will. But I'm going to start with the gloomy facts first, and then I'll move towards the positives. It's not hard to find some of the things to worry about, but try and put that in the context of the positives that remain. These are not new positives, I think, but pre-existing strengths that continue even in the face of our current difficulties. So the bad news is summarized in this graphic. Going back to 1960, U.S. eastern hardwood sawmill production has never been this low. So I've got right now indicated there with a red arrow, less than 5 million board feet on an annualized basis is, almost a third of the peak production that existed in the past. Now, of course, the wood industry, a commodity business, has had a lot of ups and downs in the past, and we've had a couple of recent impacts that have knocked us back. But this isn't just the run-of-mill up and downs that the industry has gotten good at surviving. We're in record territory, so it's reasonable to stop and think about where these challenges have come from and what they mean for the future. Well, there's a couple things in the relatively near past that have contributed a lot to our current record levels of low production. And the first I'll point to is the trade war with China. China has evolved over the past 10 years to become kind of our main customer, particularly for grade hardwood lumber, which has traditionally been the focus of the hardwood industry. And the upper part of this figure shows that China, and the boxes in this picture are in proportion to the dollar value of the exports. In the case of the upper part, it's in 2017, and you see that almost half of the value of exports was to China. And so when we got in a trade war with China, those tariffs had an impact on the demand for American lumber in China and greatly reduced Chinese intake and thus exports as a whole. So it really hurt us. That was part of the calculus that was made about that trade disagreement. But there was winners and losers from that, and the hardwood industry was hit very hard by that. Now, more recently, as the effects of the trade war were starting to ease, we had COVID, and that double whammy of COVID and the trade war have led us to our current record low production situation. So the red bars in this graphic show the clear impact of COVID starting in the late spring. Now, both of those should, allow for some recovery in the coming months and years. But there are some longer-term trends which are troubling also. This graphic here shows that in all of the southern states, and no less in Tennessee and in Kentucky, which are the major hardwood states, a consistent and substantial decline in the number of mills in those states. And part of this trend is, a general trend towards larger and more efficient manufacturing operations. We see that in a lot of businesses, say in agriculture. But also, we don't have a general increase in the overall production, and certainly now that we're at record lows, that's clear. And so that reduction in mill numbers is partly a reflection of the reduced production overall of hardwood lumber. So that doesn't show any signs of turning around, at least not in the short term. Another thing that we've experienced recently is the closure of Domtar's Kingsport mill, which was a major customer for residues from sawmilling operations. And, this just kind of highlights, one of the strengths that the local industry here has is that there's many different players in the business. So if one suffers, another can take up the slack. On the other hand, the other side of that coin is it can be kind of a weakness. In some of the European and northern, Canada, for example, a lot of the wood manufacturing operations are what they call integrated, where the same company operates the sawmill and the pulp mill and the logging capacity also. So all of those units of the business can be working together. Here, where we have a more decentralized system, when you lose a major part of that wood ecosystem, if you will, it can really hurt locally. So We've experienced this before, where other pulp mill closures mean that in that area there becomes a challenge with what to do with the sawmill residues. And this is highlighted, just a characteristic of our industry, that we depend on other parts of the woodworking industry, but those parts make their own decisions. In the case of this Kingsport mill, they're switching paper types due to changes in demand in their marketplace, and that has the indirect effect of greatly impacting the hardwood sawmills that exist in that area. So in addition to the general reduction in demand that we seem to be seeing, and some of the short-term bumps in the road, that major bumps with the trade war and with COVID, we could look to our forest resource, which overall is increasing in volume. We have more wood in our forests than we used to in Tennessee, and that's a general trend around the eastern United States in general. But there is some question as to the quality of that resource. Simply more does not necessarily mean better in the case of hardwood volume. And we have some indication that we're getting a relative abundance of relatively low-grade wood in our forests, which provides some challenge, particularly in the old model, where the real profit opportunities were in the high-grade lumber parts of the business. But finally, and from my perspective, maybe the most troubling trend is an apparent switch away from traditional solid hardwood products towards other materials. So the substitution of generally lower cost materials for the traditional high value hardwood products, such as hardwood flooring, solid hardwood flooring, hardwood cabinets, and hardwood molding and millwork. So what this graphic shows you with remodeling is that per unit of remodeling, we're using less hardwood lumber. And you can see a similar graphic. I don't show it here, but for new house construction too. So there used to be a real strong link between the demand for housing in general and the demand for hardwood lumber, but both because of the growth of the export market and the loss of hardwood lumber as the primary interior material, this trend towards substitution of non-solid hardwood products within housing, then that link is sort of breaking and between housing and demand for hardwood, and a huge part of our traditional market is switching to other materials. More on that later when we start thinking about some of the positives and opportunities. So we've had a lot of short and longer term concerns that exist, and we are in a record low situation, as I mentioned. But because of the ups and downs of the past and the nature of our business, very decentralized, we do have a very resilient and tenacious industry. And so I show this this mouse struggling on to make it work, prepared as best he can to meet the future challenges. So let's look at some of the characteristics that bode well, some of the things that remain as positives. Well, in the short term, or I think it's short term, I keep waiting for this fashion to fade, but we have this exceptional demand for whiskey barrels, for aging American whiskey in white oak barrels, and they literally can't make enough whiskey. They don't have the capacity to make enough barrels to house the whiskey. So it's been a bubble that just doesn't seem to want to burst, and COVID's not going to make it pop any sooner, because people are drinking even more now. But this strength in the white oak market has really buoyed the demand and value of white oak. It's even impacting other things like chestnut oak, which can't be used for barrels, but it is a white oak that can be used for lumber. So this is a short-term thing. You might expect it to fade, but for people who have white oak, you can enjoy it while it lasts. But that's also indicative of one of the strengths of our business is that we don't have all our eggs in one basket. We have a lot of uses for our material and a lot of species. So if one species grows or falls in popularity, there's other species that we can use. Similarly, if the grade lumber market is weak, we have industrial wood products like ties and mat timbers and other things that can help to buoy the industry. You can, to some extent, switch production to emphasize the production of those other products. So there's a lot of flexibility, both in terms of the species mix and the great diversity of products that can be made from a hardwood log that help us to be a little bit resilient in the face of dropping demand. It certainly is to be remembered that there is a big industry in this area. This heat map of sawmill numbers shows that in hardwood country we have just a tremendous number of mills, which means we have a tremendous number of landowners who supply those mills via a tremendous number of loggers who have the equipment and the knowledge to transport that material, and then we have a great infrastructure of further manufacturing or exporting or whatever. So, that kind of strength in numbers, it doesn't mean that we're too big to fail, but it does give us a lot of momentum to carry forward into the future. And I was sort of pondering the nature of the resource. We're getting more low grade standing in our forests and some of the challenges that provides. But to put it into a global context, we still have special, in the global context, species in the United States. American hardwoods are kind of a premium in the world market, and we have the capacity, as is shown here, to produce wonderfully high quality of logs if we put our mind to it. So the capacity for providing a special product to the global marketplace remains in the United States. Our resource is still a special advantage. Finally, or not finally, but in addition, I mentioned that the linkage between housing and hardwood demand has weakened, but there still is a connection between building houses and the need to put wood products in them. And unlike in the past, we are not in a housing bubble. We have not been building enough houses in the recent past to meet what we would expect for demand based on our growing population. So, this might not necessarily mean a spike in hardwood demand for the reasons that I mentioned about substitution, but it certainly wouldn't suggest that the housing is going away and therefore we won't need hardwoods for those houses. Another strength that I think we have is that when we export lumber, we're not simply exporting the manufacturing process. We are actually providing a raw material that is used in the domestic markets of our export countries. So in the case of China, something like 80% or more of the American hardwoods that go over there stay over there for their growing population and their population that's increasing in prosperity. And that trend is true around the world. And for many of you who've seen me talk before, you might have seen this very slide. It's a favorite of mine. Basically, it just means that as the world's population grows, and the world's population grows more prosperous, which are both long-term trends, there will be naturally a growing demand for wood products of all types, including hardwoods. And to a certain extent, there is only so much capacity to supply that wood, only so many places where large amounts of wood are available. And one of those key suppliers is the brown in this graphic, which is North America, including, of course, the United States. The United States is the world's largest producer still of wood products, and so that can't go away because more people are going to need more wood, and they're going to have to at least partially get it from the United States. This is a slightly different take on basically the same message, but with particular relevance to the growing low-grade demand. We have a lot of low-grade wood that we can't even seem to get rid of here in the short term, but a lot of the manufacturing, for example, for paper has shifted to other parts of the world, like Asia, and that Asian destination is going to require the Asian manufacturing of paper is going to require wood from all over the world. And so we're in a sort of an imbalance here between demand and where it's located in Asia for the production of paper, and supply where it's located, which is largely in North America. So eventually the market should link those two, the supply from the United States with demand around the world, and that can include low grade. So we, in the longer term, would hope that connection is made and to the benefit of increasing demand within the United States. In addition, though, to having the wood, we have legal wood and an infrastructure of manufacturing that is legal and widely recognized and accepted to be legal. So illegal logging is of growing concern around the world, and there's increasing regulation laws relating to illegal logging and illegal shipments of wood, and the United States basically gets a pass on that. It's one of the inherent advantages that U.S. producer has, is just the generally accepted legality of the wood. Another advantage I hope to see, and I hope I'm not just looking at the world through rosy glasses here, but it seems like we've long battled as wood producers the natural skepticism that, you know, cutting a tree must be bad, and I think we're many parts of the marketplace and some of our own promotion efforts are working towards convincing people that it's not that way at all. In fact, if you want to make a sustainable choice, you should choose wood, and that's the effort of this branding program. But you know, I think that's becoming a little more widely accepted throughout the world of architects and suppliers and specifiers, and that's a natural advantage to our material. Working my way towards the final bit of what I wanted to say is kind of relating back to the troubling trend towards the substitution of non-hardwood products. Some of you may know that there was a discussion about having a kind of a hardwood checkoff where various manufacturers in the industry would contribute towards a group promotion effort. And that particular effort was not supported widely enough to become implemented, but there continues to be some awareness that we need to work together to promote American hardwoods, and I suspect that those promotion efforts will be effective to some extent. Which brings me really to my final slide here, and that's kind of related to these promotional efforts and also the substitution. So I mentioned that substitution is a troubling trend, and I kind of see it as a race to the bottom. You know, a lot of these substitute products, their main advantage is that they're less expensive, and hardwood by its very nature is often going to have a hard time competing on the basis of lowest price. And I just saw the words of Warren Buffett, you know, the famous investor, who said, "Price is what you pay and value is what you get." And I would like to kind of apply that mentality to hardwoods, where it may not be the least expensive option, and certainly this wristwatch on the right-hand side at $50,000 isn't the least expensive option, but the value of what you get in American hardwoods is high, and I would hope that we can start to convince the consumers that they need to pay a little more and get a lot more when it comes to hardwood lumber. So there's a lot of reasons for pessimism. We're in a record low situation, but it's probably not the end of the hardwood industry for a lot of good reasons. So thank you for your attention, and I'm sorry I couldn't see you in person, but I understand there'll be an opportunity for some questions later, and I look forward to chatting with you at that time. Thank you.
Hello, I would like to take a moment and introduce myself. I am Ashley Gooden, the Executive Director for the Railway Tie Association, or RTA as we are known. I'd like to thank the Tennessee Forestry Association and Candace Dinwiddie for asking me to present this morning. I really appreciate the opportunity and hope that you will find a few things that I say beneficial to you and your business. First of all, I'd like to start with who is RTA if you haven't heard about us before or don't know who we are. The Railway Tie Association was formed in 1919, and we are primarily a forestry and timber oriented trade association whose mission is to promote the value of the wooden crosstie through research, education, promotion, and networking. We've been based in Fayetteville, Georgia since 1996. We've had several headquarter locations throughout the U.S. in our life. And we currently have 3,783 members. And you can see the breakdown here at the bottom of this slide. Producers who are sawmills like yourselves or the treatment plants make up the bulk of our membership. These are corporate members. And we have 3,182 producers. And as you can see, we have other affiliated industries such as preservative suppliers, non-preservative suppliers who would provide items such as treatment equipment, as well as things like the tie plates that you see on the end of these German stacks here in the photo. We also have contractors in recycling management to cover the entire life cycle of the cross tie. That would include the installation of ties as well as the pickup, recycling, and end of life for cross ties. We have a category for timberland owners, and we would love to have more. So if you're a timberland owner, please look at our website and see if this could be a good fit for you. We also have associate corporate members. These are our railroads and our railroad procurement agents who join as individuals. So the associates are actually individuals rather than companies. And then honorary associates as well as global members. What we believe as an organization is that wood ties are the most economical, sustainable, and durable solution for the railroads. We're looking at wooden cross ties as a product. Those ties have supported American rail transportation for over 150 years. And they've done nothing but continually improve in terms of durability and life cycle as we've learned more about the treatment process, dual treatments of cross ties where we add borates into the tie along with preservatives such as copper naphthenate or creosote. So a very durable solution, a very economical solution, easy to maintain and very cost effective in service. We believe that the health of our supply chain of foresters, sawmills, and treaters is vital to the long-term success of wooden cross ties. Healthy sawmills and a healthy forestry industry is very important to us in the supply chain. And again, with the continued research and innovation, we can extend the service life of wooden ties as well as have a meaningful use for ties after their rail service life is ended. One of the challenges as an industry that we are addressing from an association perspective is when the ties have reached the end of their service life in railroads after 25 to 40, maybe even 50 years in service, depending on the track and conditions. Where does that tie go once it leaves service in track? So that's one of the current challenges that we are addressing as an association. So why is this important? Let's look at a few numbers. Roughly 17 million wood cross ties are replaced every year. And then wood cross ties comprise approximately 95% of all railway ties in service. One of the things that we look at with those 17 million wood ties, and we'll talk about stability here in a few slides, is that is a consistent usage of the wood cross tie product. Wood cross ties is 95% of all ties in service over the 140,000 miles of railroad infrastructure. That accounts to 400 million wood ties that are currently in service. The reason that we are continually promoting the use of the wood cross tie is once that line changes over to an alternate material such as steel or concrete, it typically does not return to wood cross ties. So it's very important that we promote this economical, sustainable, serviceable resource that we have for the railroads. So again, just to go over the numbers, 140,000 miles of privately owned infrastructure through 49 states. There are approximately 3,250 ties per mile. So if we use a 90% factor, that leaves us with 400 million wood ties in service. So let's dig just a little deeper. Why is this important to the hardwood and forestry industry? In 2020, hardwood consumption was roughly 60% pallet lumber, cants, ties, board road, and mat, and about 40% grade lumber. And I'd like to take a moment and thank Tom Inman with the Appalachian Hardwood Manufacturers for providing this information to us during RTA's annual conference last week. These are very important numbers to focus on. And at 20 years ago, the industrial lumber market was at about 40%, while the grade lumber market was at about 60%. So you can see the increased uses on the industrial side. And then when we look at the industrial products, you can see that railway ties constitute about 21% of the total industrial lumber production in the year 2020. And again, I'd like to thank Tom Inman and the information from the Hardwood Market Report that is what we're using here on these slides. So let's talk about the value of the supply chain. Looking at that 20% of the industrial wood market, let's tie this to a board footage number. Cross ties will consume approximately 800 million board feet of hardwoods in 2020. However, one of the things that's been made clear to me since I've assumed this role of executive director is looking at the health of the sawmills. When you cut a 7x9 boxed heart cross tie out of the center of the log, that's only 50% utilization roughly of log fiber. So you have to have healthy markets for all of your side lumber and chips and dust in order to make it economical for you to cut a cross tie. So we work with other associations that also consume industrial lumber to try to be sure that we have healthy markets for the rest of the log and that you can maintain a profitable business. There again, the health of our supply chain is vital to the supply of cross ties, and we want to be sure that you remain in business. We want to be sure to convey that message to railroads and consumers that the health of sawmills as a whole is vital to ensure that we can still meet the demand for cross ties year over year. So what do we do to convey that message? One of the things that RTA is continually doing is gathering data. We gather data from surveyors in different regions to gauge sentiment about how markets are doing. On the left-hand side of this slide, you will see our wood cross tie procurement trends. This is available at our website, www.rtastats.org. And as you can see, we're looking at Kentucky and Tennessee from September 2020. You can break this down by different regions of the country and different months to gauge the sentiment. And there are about 10 or 12 metrics on this website that we look at, including quantity of logs on hand at yard, log availability, what your markets are for other products that we just talked about. And this is not a hard metric, but it is more of a subjective sentiment as to how we feel things are going in these particular regions at this particular time. And then we use this data to have the conversations with railroads and with treaters to encourage healthy markets. This gives us a pulse of the industry. We also report out inventory to sales ratios and the inventory numbers on hand on a monthly basis or bi-monthly basis in our magazine. So you can find those on our main website, rta.org. We also survey railroads for usage of cross ties, switch ties, and keep a pulse on alternative materials. So last week at our virtual conference, railroad procurement agents gave us their perspective on 2021 purchases and their maintenance plans, and we'll talk about that when we look ahead here in a few slides. So we're constantly gathering data, and then we're reporting that out to all of you as an industry, and you can access this on our websites. The other thing that we do is educate. So every year, with the exception of 2020, we hold an annual tie grading seminar where sawmills, as well as treaters or railroads, can send individuals to receive training on tie grading so that you understand the defects, understand how to read a railroad's particular tie specification, as well as the ARIMA 30 specification, which is the broad general spec for cross ties. So you can gain that experience, and as has been said to me, and I agree with this statement, find out the reasons why to keep a tie rather than reject a tie. But hopefully with that information and the education, it allows you to understand and maximize your efficiency in tie production. We also produce the tie guide. You'll see a sample of that on the left-hand side of the screen. That's a handbook for commercial timbers used by the railway industry, but what that does is it gives you by species the locations of the country where those are grown and are available. It gives a treatability number that would indicate how readily a particular species accepts treatments such as creosote, copper naphthenate. So all of that's very important information in the tie guide. Tie those things together, we have the tie grading app. So the tie grading app is a quick tool you can download on your phone that you can see the defects, some of the railroad specifications, and it's a quick reference in the field for pass fail of railway ties or to educate you on the defects. We have defect posters that you could put in your saw cab or around your grading chain, anything along those lines to look at defects that we would look for in ties and the rail bearing area of ties. One other tool not mentioned here is the select tie tool that we also have. This is used primarily by contractors and short lines who may not have their own tie specification, but it gives you information on wood cross ties, and if you're evaluating tangent or straight track versus curved track and how many miles of service, it will put some of the data that we've collected to use within that tool to help determine what is the best tie choice for this application, and it will give you a return on investment versus a concrete, a steel, or a composite tie as well. So that's a tool that we make available to our rail customers there again to illustrate some of the benefits of the wood cross tie. Spring conference, where we need to meet again. This will be new to us in 2021. Typically our spring event is a field trip where we go out and tour plants in production. However, this year we're holding it in Florence, South Carolina in June. And we'll be addressing some issues there again related to cross tie life cycle, but also bringing in content that may be very interesting and relevant to you in terms of leadership, succession planning, employment, how to address the should we say, unskilled workforce issues that we're seeing through some of our information coming back from sawmills, that you're having a challenge addressing labor and employment issues. So we want to bring relevant knowledge to our members, and we'll be doing that in 2021, and we hope you'll join us for that. And we look forward to our annual conference and symposium, which is typically the third week of October, again, where we bring in tie procurement professionals from the railroad, engineering, talk about some of the challenges that we're facing, but also celebrate the successes of the year, and then a look ahead into the future. And then last but not least, we are advocates for the wooden cross tie and all of its related industries. So we participate in fly-ins and advocacy efforts from the Hardwood Federation, as well as Railroad Day on the Hill to support the railroads, efforts of the Treated Wood Council, who look to the interest of the treaters and preservers of wood products, same with the Western Wood Preserving Institute, or WWPI. We'll also participate, particularly in terms of providing data and experience, with any state and local advocacy efforts regarding treated industrial wood products or cross ties where we can. And again, a part of our advocacy is simply the flow of information between all segments of the cross tie life, from tree through track and beyond, to be sure that all parties are aware of concerns of the other industries, such as the railroads are aware of the concerns of the sawmills that affect our supply chain. So we are strong advocates for the ties. So now let's take a look ahead and talk about a few things that perhaps you can do. So looking ahead to 2021, we're looking at no large pullback in railroad purchasing or maintenance projects. That's one of the things that came out of our conference last week, is railroads are planning to move ahead with their projected maintenance for 2021 and are not showing signs of pullback. However, there's a big asterisk with all of these numbers, that COVID-19 is a black swan event. Anything can change in the moment. So if rail traffic doesn't rebound, depending on what the political climate is and shutdowns, all of the what ifs, there could be changes, but right now the tie industry is staying the course, moving ahead. Looking at our economists that also presented last week from ITR Economics, and looking at larger macroeconomic trends, the economic indicators show softening in the markets third and fourth quarter of 2021, and that lag will continue until around mid-2022, when we start to see a rebound of the industry. So his advice to our attendees last week was, use 2021 to position yourself for the growth in 2022. So we'll see what happens, but as I said, the tie industry is stable and we're staying the course right now. I've mentioned the unknowns. We're all living with those right now related to COVID-19. But again, through all of our data and our projections, as well as the Railroad Purchasing Panel last week, we are still projecting a demand of roughly 17 million ties in 2021. So again, stability in this market. So what can you do? A great quote from a friend of mine, Carl Kirsch, is, build your network before you need your network. If you are interested in producing rail ties and have not been, start building the relationships with the treaters and their purchasing and procurement agents that would buy ties from you. Start building those relationships now before you really need that network. So reach out. If you aren't cutting ties, educate yourself on the standards and requirements. We have the resources for you here at RTA. If it's something that you're interested in, we would be glad to help and help you evaluate whether that's something that would be a good fit for you, and point you in the direction of building that network and those contacts that you would need if you moved forward in cutting ties. Again, look at your own financial and economic data and evaluate your next move. We have the data on the tie side. We would be more than happy to share that with you. But look at your own business and decide what your next requirements are going to be, again, and start building your network. All of this comes back to, and I have to do it the sales pitch, become a member of the Railway Tie Association. If you're interested in the tie business, we're more than happy to help you out. It really is a great big family, and we would love to have you. Speaking of family, I'd like to introduce you to the rest of the RTA team. To my right, your left in this picture is Barbara Stacy, our Director of Communications, and to my left, your right, is Debbie Corallo, our COO, and we are here to help wherever we can. My contact information is here on the slide. Again, thank you to Candace and TFA for this opportunity to present, and have a great day.
for having me at your annual conference. My name is Heidi Smith, and I am the General Manager of Global Business for the TVA Economic Development Team. I've had the pleasure of being at TVA for 18 years. I oversee business attraction and retention, community development and training, our marketing and outreach program for the Valley, and the site development program. Prior to coming to TVA, I worked for a local design build contractor, Forkham Lanham, out of Dyersburg, Tennessee, and I was Vice President of Business Development and Marketing. Tennessee Valley Authority, or better known as TVA, is the country's largest public power company. We provide utility power to 153 local power companies, 58 direct serve customers. We serve power in a 7-state region, which encompasses 80,000 square miles and 10 million people. That 7-state region, as you can see on the map, serves most all of Tennessee, parts of Kentucky, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, North Carolina, and Virginia. TVA's mission is one of service, making life better for the people of the Valley. And we do that in 3 main areas: environmental stewardship, producing and generating affordable electrical power, and economic development. What do we do in economic development? We attract new companies and investment. We engage with our communities, our local communities, and existing industry. And we serve with economic partners. And those economic partners include state agencies, local regional groups, chambers of commerce, and economic development associations across the region, all in the spirit of creating jobs and investment for our communities. When you look at work that we do in economic development and how that translates into jobs and investment, one of the things that in creating jobs and investment is the site selection criteria. When a company comes to look for an investment or a new location or expanding in their investment, they're going to look through criteria that is meaningful to them to make that location decision. There is a trade publication called Area Development Magazine. They do an annual survey to corporate real estate executives and site selection consultants. The corporate real estate is a company individual that has the responsibility to find that location investment or expansion opportunity. The site selection consultant is an entity that will represent that company. So again, Area Development does this survey, and they ask both site selection consultants and the corporate executives the top 10 factors that make up location requirements. If you look on the left-hand side, that's the site consultant survey. The number one ranked item in terms of importance is availability of skilled labor. Where is that labor? How far are they from that location? And what are they trained and able to do? Another important factor is highway accessibility, and it's also rated high on the corporate executive survey. The accessibility from the highway to the location. So for example, if a community does not have highway accessibility, what type of access do they have to their location, to their site, to their building? A couple other items on the site selection survey are state and local incentives. What incentives are available from a state agency and a local community? Availability of land and buildings also are important. And then finally, on the site selection survey, it's fast track permitting. And I'd like to speak to that in a minute, but permitting is highly ranked as number 8 in the site selection survey. On the corporate executive survey, you'll note on the left-hand side, quality of life is ranked number 4. And so you might ask me, what is quality of life? Well, quality of life is, why do people live there? Why do they stay there? And what do they do for fun there? And it's ranked high on this survey because generally speaking, somebody at that corporation is going to go live and work in that local community. So they're going to want to know what it's like to live there, and is there a good quality of life in that community. You'll see a couple of tax mentions, corporate tax rate and tax exemptions. Again, that's going to be highly rated from a corporation standpoint. And then the labor and the skilled labor is also important from that, the corporate executive survey. I will also note that over time, that availability of skilled labor has moved up year after year in both surveys as an important factor in making a location decision. Drilling down to wood-related site selection criteria, there's a couple of key factors here as well. So as it relates to the site, where the site is located, it needs to be in proximity to a sustainable wood basket. So that means, where is that raw material going to come from? So that's very important, and that's generally ranked pretty high. Companies generally don't want to ship any farther than 60-mile radius. Transportation and logistics are a critical driver, and how that translates is road infrastructure. Generally speaking, a wood-related manufacturer will use the road infrastructure to ship products with 100 to 200 trucks a day. So that 100 and 200 trucks a day, the road has to support that volume. And then we often see accessibility to an on-site port as a requirement in these types of projects. Utility criteria is also very important. Most operations run 24/7, which means 24 hours a day and 7 days a week. So reliable electric power will be a highly rated component in the location requirements. And oftentimes we see on-site water tank or adjacent water tank as a desirable location attribute. I mentioned earlier in the site selection survey from site selectors and corporate entities, the permitting requirements. Depending on the source, major source or minor source of air permit will dictate the schedule. So if it's a major source of air permit, it can take up to 6 months. If it's a minor source of air permit, it can take up to 3 months. So this translates into time and schedule. So as a wood-related project is looking for a location, they will factor that permitting into their timeline in order to get into a commercial operation date. And then additionally, there's just a couple of other things that will come into play. The workforce, I mentioned, you saw it in the site location requirements. It needs to meet all the skill sets necessary. So technology, automation, training components, those all have to be available. And then ensuring that sustainability is important in the wood-related field. And so all these requirements will go into a factor to make a location decision for a wood-related manufacturing company. This concludes my remarks for today. I hope that you all have a successful and beneficial conference, and I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you. Thank you.
This is the story of Forestry Mutual Insurance, a southeastern leader in providing a wide variety of insurance for the wood products industry. The industry depends on our insights and programs for just about everything, from the equipment in the field, the trucks on the road, workers' compensation, and pretty much everything else in between. Our regional community of 30-plus employees continue to pioneer the innovations that lead to practical insurance solutions. In 1971, it all began as the North Carolina Forestry Association's Self-Insurers Fund, with a plan to be a major force in the workers' compensation insurance market, specializing in the wood products industry.
The mutual originated from the North Carolina Forestry Association Self-Insurers Fund. It was formed in 1971 just because loggers could not afford workers' comp in this state. The reason why the rates were so high was because of losses. We felt like the only way we could write this type of business is through loss control. That means putting people in the field, working with the loggers to try to make them be as safe as they could. Through time, evolution, mechanization, and a lot of effort through policyholders and Forestry Mutual, we've driven the state rates down. And we try to be very hands-on. And I love that part of being a small company where I have time to go out there and meet our policyholders and try to generate new business, working with new agents or new loggers. That's the fun part of it, is building relationships with these people.
There's never a dull moment with what we do. It's always exciting. We're always out helping people. The unique thing with our agency is we're able to package stuff together just because we have access to various markets, package it with Forestry Mutual's workers' comp carrier. We're unique to that side of things.
Our employees continue to lead our clients to practical insurance solutions. Forestry Mutual Insurance programs enable the success of thousands of people in the wood products industry. Our coverage and agents span the southeastern United States. We're putting our people, our family to work to make life easier and better for you and your family. We aim to be the safer insurance provider with more convenient and personal customer service and support.
You can get killed, you can get paralyzed, or you can become a quad. That's why we want everybody to go home safe that night. Not only as an insurance company, some of these guys are our friends. I mean, we know them. I've been doing this for 30-something years, so we've built a relationship with these guys. So we want to try to protect them, and it protects our company.
It makes me feel good that I work for a company that really cares not only about its employees, but also about our clients and our policyholders.
This is something they should not have to worry about. They hire us to handle their claims. Let us worry about how the claims are handled. We'll help them get through the process.
Everything we do is available to anybody. We try to help the industry.
Our 45 years of success and growth continue, powered by the dedication of the family of employees that continue to do what they do best. Forestry Mutual Insurance Company, ensuring you go home at the end of each day.
Hi, I'm Trish Johnson, Director of Forest Conservation for the Nature Conservancy, coming to you from the University of Tennessee's Cumberland Forest. The Nature Conservancy is a nonprofit organization that was started in the 1950s as a grassroots protection conservation organization. We have grown over the past 70 years into one of the world's largest conservation organizations. We have chapters that are all throughout the contiguous U.S., and we also touch down in over 70 countries. The Tennessee chapter does work with various state and federal partners, as well as the University of Tennessee. And Kevin made a note earlier that we just signed a historical agreement last fall to join together to develop a Working Woodlands program on the university's forests. This partnership, called Working Woodlands, joins together permanent protection of forests, certified forest management plans that are Forest Stewardship Council certified, which is what we consider the gold standard of certification, and also forest carbon. Forest carbon is being traded on regulatory markets as well as voluntary markets. And before I start to discuss what the forest carbon markets are, I would love to turn it over to my colleague, Laura Marks, to describe to you better how to measure forest carbon in trees.
Hi, I'm Laura Marks, forest ecologist for the Nature Conservancy. Welcome to Forest Carbon 101. You've probably heard that trees store carbon, but what does that mean? How much carbon is in a tree like this in the forest, or in a tree near your office, or in your yard? And how does the amount of carbon in here compare to the amount of carbon that you emit when you drive your car or use energy for your house? Well, that's what we're about to find out. For the past probably 60 to 90 years, this tree has been sequestering carbon. So it started as a tiny acorn, and for all those years it's been taking carbon dioxide from the air, keeping the carbon and putting it into wood, and releasing the oxygen. We're going to see how much carbon it's stored in that time, and then what that means compared to what you might emit in your daily life. So this red oak is tree 39 in plot 2390 in Wells State Park in Massachusetts. And foresters have been measuring this tree for the past 50 years. When they first measured the diameter of it, they were probably mostly interested in the timber value of this tree. But now we've added a new value, carbon. At this point, this red oak is 18 inches in diameter. And because other scientists have done the work of cutting down trees and weighing them, we know that an 18-inch diameter red oak has about 1,600 pounds of carbon in it. That's the equivalent of almost 3 tons of carbon dioxide. To put that into perspective, when you drive a medium-sized car 2,500 miles, you're releasing a ton of carbon dioxide. So if you have a 50-mile round-trip commute, after 30 weeks, your medium-sized car and the amount of carbon that's in this tree have canceled each other out. And now we're looking at a deficit of carbon dioxide. That deficit is one reason why it's so important for all of us to reduce our emissions, use less fossil fuels, and make sure that those we use the most efficiently. But before you get too discouraged, keep in mind that this tree isn't going anywhere. Every year, this red oak is sequestering carbon, and a tree like this could easily live for 200, 300, or if it's really lucky, 500 years. And then there are lots of trees like this oak in the forest. An acre of forest can sequester more than a ton of carbon dioxide every single year. Imagine all those acres put together, and now imagine an entire rainforest. Forests are one of the best and most efficient ways that we have to take carbon dioxide out of the air and store the carbon. So we have to do our part with reducing emissions, but the more forests like this we have, the more the trees can help us out as well.
The Working Woodlands program that we kickstarted in Tennessee in 2015 focuses on large private and public landowners. Large meaning about 2,000 acres or more. And the reason why we focus on that size of landowner is because developing, monitoring, and measuring forest carbon projects are very expensive. And in order to receive the revenue from the forest carbon that we need in order to make a project viable and have good revenue for incentivizing the program, we need to have larger private forests and public forests. So we are at about 30,000 acres on 4 projects. We started on a 3,000 acre project in White County, Tennessee with a private landowner. They have a permanent forest conservation easement. They are certified under Forest Stewardship Council certification. They do sustainable harvesting practices. They manage for invasive species on their forests, and they're very excited about the program and the ecological results that they're receiving. We've been able to bring in our experts on caves and karsts and help them understand better the really wonderful features that they have on their property. The next program that we started was with Bridgestone Americas. And Bridgestone owned about 6,000 acres, also in White County on the Cumberland Plateau. And we started working with them on Forest Stewardship Council, inventory of their forest. We even started doing restoration of shortleaf pine and other native forest types, and started the idea of forest carbon markets with them. And a couple of years later, they decided they would prefer to put the ownership permanently protected under the Nature Conservancy. So we're actively managing that project. Our other project that we have is in Johnson County, and that one was a privately owned mountain. And that mountain was under development, and 10 years ago when the recession hit, the developers stopped the development of that mountain, and the Nature Conservancy was able to go in, purchase the mountain, protect it in perpetuity, and transfer it over to the state, which is now managed by the Doe Mountain Recreation Authority Board. And the Nature Conservancy helped the board get into the forest carbon market so that they could help sustainably manage and bring income into increasing ecotourism in the rural community. And then finally, our 4th project, which brings us up to about 30,000 acres of working woodlands programs in Tennessee, is the historic agreement that we signed with the University of Tennessee. This program is really interesting and innovative because it joins the opportunity to increase research and educational opportunities through our Climate Smart Forestry Fund. And it also creates a platform for the university to bring their students and their classes to help them better understand climate smart forestry practices, help them understand these innovative carbon markets, and just bring some new light to private landowners to help them and encourage them understand that this may be an opportunity for them. So we have these large private and public partnerships with Working Woodlands, and the Nature Conservancy knows that this is just the beginning. And we want to ensure that small private forest landowners can also engage in forest carbon markets and bring in income to them to help them manage their forests, help them protect their forests. And so the Nature Conservancy started a partnership with American Forest Foundation. We also got gracious funding from larger corporations to kickstart this program to develop the Family Forest Program. Family Forest Program is a pilot that is started in Pennsylvania, and it brings together 20-acre forest landowners up to about 200-acre forest landowners and gives them the opportunity to join into voluntary forest carbon markets so that they can get added income for their forest, help them manage more sustainably to increase forest health, increase forest sequestration, and bring a greater opportunity to forest landowners to keep their forests in forests for generations to come. So what is a carbon market? The carbon marketplace was developed quite a while ago in California, and California regulates any business or corporation that's operating out of California to cap their emissions. So when they're operating their business, they are putting off emissions or carbon dioxide, carbon monoxides. And there is a cap or a ceiling by which the number of those emissions are allowed to be emitted. And if that corporation goes above that, they are allowed to purchase a carbon credit, which is carbon that's being sequestered into a forest, a wetland, or another technology that is capturing that carbon emission. So there is a marketplace by which landowners, organizations are selling carbon capture or carbon credits, and then businesses out of California are able to purchase those credits. That is the regulatory market. The voluntary market is one in which there is no regulation for corporations or private individuals to actually buy a carbon credit. So carbon credits are being developed by private landowners, such as the University of Tennessee Institute of Ag and the Nature Conservancy with our Working Woodlands program. And corporations are buying it just because they want to make a difference. They want to make a difference in our changing climate and the conditions that our globe is facing. So thank you for having me here today. I appreciate the opportunity, the great partnership that we've started with the University of Tennessee to join in on developing a forest carbon project, the Working Woodlands program, and help to share that with landowners and encourage landowners to be a part of the solution of our changing climate.
David West with the Forest Resources Association, and I've been asked to talk about logging trends. So first we will cover safety. This slide displays data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and it shows the fatal work injury rate per 100,000 employees. And this data is for 2018. It's the most recent that's been compiled. It came out earlier this year, and logging workers is the most dangerous job that there is in the U.S. at this time. This chart displays logging fatalities in the United States since 1992. And you see that there's been quite a nice decline over the years, yet we have plateaued in recent years. So the decline, I believe is primarily due to increased mechanization of harvesting. And so we've gone from averaging over 100 employees per year being killed to somewhere between 60 and 70 now. And the plateau is worrisome. We're not getting better. This chart displays the total fatalities from 2011 to 2018 by our FRA regions. And so Tennessee actually falls within two of our regions, with the eastern half falling in the Appalachian region and the western half in the South Central. As you can see, the Appalachian region and the western region have the majority of the fatalities, and those are areas where we have more manual processes, particularly felling, due to topography. So I think the term I like to talk about is boots on the ground. If you look at most of the fatality, if you look at the actual events, in most cases, it's when people are their boots are on the ground. They're not in a cab. And so I think the improvements we've made was getting people in cabs and off the ground. So, but we still have areas that make this difficult to do. My final chart on safety displays the fatalities on a state-by-state basis. And as you can see, Tennessee is one of the higher ones, and then almost all the higher ones are in areas where topography dictates more boots on the ground than others. So efforts are being made to get the boots off the ground. Some fairly new technologies, tethered logging systems, where there's winch assist, so you can get some of the mechanized equipment on steeper slopes. I think this started in New Zealand, and then the U.S. Pacific Northwest. They're using the technology there, and it is. I'm aware of one system in West Virginia, so it is moving east, and it's something to think about. I'm now going to cover several slides from Dr. Sean Baker's Logging and Hauling Risks and Opportunities. It's a presentation he made last December at Forest Wood Flows and Cash Flows Conference, and I expect several of you guys are familiar with Forest, and they do a great job, and I appreciate their allowing me to use their material. So this map displays logging employment since 2014. So you see it changing, and the employment has declined across the U.S., but it has not shifted regionally. Looking at the same data regionally, this chart displays the slow and steady decline in employment in logging, and if the trends continue, it'll continue will continue to fall. So logging has an age dilemma. In 2018, the average age of a logger was 48.5 years versus 42 years for the total workforce. And you can see in the chart that in 2000 the average age of the logger was just above 40, so 41, and now it's 48.5. Additionally, the green line on the graph shows the percentage of employees that are 55 and older, and it's so over 35% of loggers are over 55 years. look at other industries, there's not many that have an older workforce. The list of those that do would be farmers, bus drivers, appliance repair, newspaper publishers, postal service workers, and undertakers. So I think training for new workers is something that's needed. This chart displays the change over the past 20 years in employment, equipment sales, and production. And as you can see, equipment is more strongly correlated with production over the last 20 years, and mechanization continues to fuel improving productivity. So I think this graph really speaks to the impacts of mechanization. This is broken out regionally between the South and the West and the North. And as you can see, the output per employee is up over 40% in the South and the West. And for some reason, the Northern productivity is not. So now I'm going to switch gears a little bit and talk about the always interesting topic of trucking. Hauling capacity remains the key bottleneck, both for individual crews and the industry as a whole. It is challenging to increase capacity without adding drivers. So an interesting fact, or some data here that suggests that the average loads per day for a southern log truck driver is 2.2 loads a day. And so that requires 19,500 drivers to move the wood that we're moving, 300 million tons. So we need to get better at efficiency with trucking, and that goes both in the woods, getting your trucks turned quicker, and then at the mills. And the mills need to work hard to get folks in and out, because if we do in fact get an increase of 13 million tons in the South, as in the current forecast from Forestry, that means we'd need 800 more drivers. Now, if we could get that 2.2 average loads per day up to just 2.4, we don't need any more drivers. So I think all of us need to make efforts to increase our productivity, whether that's dispatching or turn time at the mills or turn time in the woods. Okay, some more data on log truck drivers. As you can see in the chart, salaries have been going up since 2012, yet the last couple of years, at least through 18, the numbers are dropping despite the fact that they're getting more money. And the trucker shortages are impacting all industries that are reliant on trucking. And we can't talk about log trucking without talking about insurance costs. Truck insurance premiums have increased 80% over the last 8 years. And the increases have disproportionately affected smaller firms, as you can see in the chart. I mean, the less than 5 trucks, it's almost double. This is just comparing 2019 to 2017. And then, most of the loggers that I know are going to fall in the categories of the first 2 categories on this chart, less than 5 or 5 to 25. So we talk about this every day. I have a son in the business, and he tells me what he's paying for log truck insurance, and it's very difficult. And log truck operating costs, they have increased at a faster pace than the market rate for trucking since 2015. And I think a key driver of this is the insurance cost. So I'm going to give a little bit of information on some markets, because markets are certainly important to the logging community. Well, you can't talk about markets without talking about this year's lumber market. I put this together. It took the first week of January market price for these 4 products, and then each month after that, it compared that price to the January price. Markets were starting out the year good. They started moving up for a couple of months, and you can see COVID hit. It dipped down a bit, and then it really took off, particularly, July, August. And so, for example, looking at the orange line, which is Southern Yellow Pine 2x10s, I mean, they reached a point in September that were 3.5 times the price it was in January. and OSB over 3 times as it was in January. Same thing for 2x6s. Now, the last couple of months we've seen it drop, and we all expected that would happen at some point, but it's been quite the year for lumber and OSB. And with the huge run-up in lumber prices, I've had many family members, friends, acquaintances say, hey, with these new lumber prices, I should get more for my timber. And this graph tells you why that's not the case. It turns out that, the lumber market is driven by supply and demand for lumber, and the timber market is driven by the supply and demand for timber. And when you see how fast the pine saw timber, in particular component, has been growing, there's just more wood out there. And so, mills don't have to pay more for wood because there's just too much of it out there. So a quick look at pulp and paper. Again, this is information from Forestry again. So as you can see, and as you all know, paper and paperboard production has been declining for years. Most notably in printing and writing and newsprint. That's the drivers on the decline. The containerboard business or packaging has been really steady, slightly growing, and is forecast to slightly grow. And then household sanitary products, towel and tissue, that's also a solid market. So, but overall, we're looking at a continued slow decline in total paper and paperboard production. Realizing that hardwood and hardwood lumber in particular is a really big part of the Tennessee forest products industry. I have a few slides that I got from Mike Snow. He's the American Hardwood Export Council, and he agreed to let me share these few slides. This first one is, to me, was eye-opening. I never realized this, that the grade lumber that is produced in the United States, 54% of it is used in the United States, and 46% goes to the rest of the world, including China, and China being by far the largest market. That's something that I didn't know. As you can see in the chart, the United States is the largest exporter of hardwood sawn lumber. Almost double the next largest, and you can see in the chart, the bars by year, that we've certainly seen some declines since the peak in 2017. And this slide shows the world's 10 largest sawn hardwood importers, so the markets for the lumber. And it's easy to see who dominates that. China is they're the big dogs, and by a long shot. And again, you can see their declines, particularly in 2019. So my final slide displays U.S. hardwood lumber exports to China, and it breaks it out in the against tariffs. So in 2017, before there were tariffs, you can see that we were hovering around the 200,000 cubic meter per month to China, and then when tariffs came in, that started dropping. It probably averaged somewhere around 100, dropped to 150,000 cubic meters a month, and even lower. And then when full tariffs in the red section, we're below 100,000, so we're less than half of what we were before the tariffs. The tariffs, there has been some change to the tariffs, and so the green section is when the tariffs were removed, started to pick up a little bit, but I think still, COVID is keeping that down probably, and then, just the day-to-day, what we hear on trade seems to impact the markets. So for the state of Tennessee and then the large presence in the hardwood industry, I mean, tariffs really matter, and they are quite impactful, as you all know. That's my final slide today, and I just want to thank the Tennessee Forestry Association for the opportunity to participate. Have a good day.
Hi, my name is Terry Fry, and I work with TFA as the Education and Workforce Development Coordinator. I have totally enjoyed working with TFA for the past year and a half. As I'm sure you could expect, we were not able to have our normal programs last spring or summer. But we have done a few makeup workshops for teachers this fall. To begin with, we have had 3 virtual professional developments for educators on Zoom. First was a Project Learning Tree workshop in August for the Forest Recreation class at UT. Second, we held a forestry content workshop in September with Dr. David Merker with UT Extension in Back Porch Forestry and Dr. Cameron Stouter, Forest Health Program Specialist with TDF. Third, we gave a Project Learning Tree workshop for teachers in October. These workshops were a good learning experience for us, and they received good reviews from the participants. Although virtual meetings are not ideal, especially for the hands-on activities taught in PLT, they are a great tool for reaching people in all regions of the state who may not be able to travel to our in-person workshops. I think we will continue to offer virtual workshops in the future, and it's a tool we should keep in our toolbox. Next, we have also offered 3 in-person professional development workshops for educators in Huntland, Tennessee. We partnered with Daryl Burnt with TWRA to have an aquatics workshop in September. The teachers collected samples of aquatic life as Daryl discussed the unique characteristics and biological diversity contained in the Elk and Duck rivers in Tennessee. The importance of species diversity as an indicator of water quality and the danger imposed on Tennessee's waterways by invasive pests was emphasized by Daryl. On October 10th, we held a forestry workshop at the Franklin State Forest. The day started with informative talks on forest ecology, fire, and succession by Rance Fry, certified forester, and invasive forest pests in Tennessee by Dr. Cameron Stouter, Forest Health Program Specialist with Tennessee's Division of Forestry. After lunch, we took a tour in the Franklin State Forest, and an in-depth discussion was had on the purpose of forest management and the ways the forest can be managed to benefit wildlife. And on October 24th, we had a big Project Learning Tree workshop in Huntland with the fabulous support of Dave and Cindy Walters. We really appreciate the support of Thompson Appalachian Hardwoods in providing the use of the Huntland Community Center and lunch for 2 of the workshops. Huber provided lunch for the forestry workshop. You can see more pictures of these workshops on the TFA page on Facebook. And in fact, I encourage you to follow TFA on Facebook. We post a schedule of events on the TFA page, and I post pictures of our teacher workshops. I encourage everyone to like and share the posts on the TFA page when you see them. When you like a post, it makes the algorithms in Facebook share our posts with more people, which in turn helps us promote our activities and programs. In addition to my conservation education work, beginning this fall, I have been offered the opportunity to partner with TFA, Tennessee Division of Forestry, and the Alabama Forestry Association on the Workforce Development Grant and Project. As you know, workforce development, especially in rural areas, is a priority for Governor Lee's administration. Workforce development is a concern in Tennessee for several reasons. For one, it is projected that by the year 2030, 77% of skilled baby boomers will leave the workplace. Second, for every 4 people that leave the trades, only 1 is currently being replaced. I would like to start a conversation with our TFA members and others in secondary markets to determine the job skills most needed or the ways TFA and TDF can support you the most. I have already begun visiting logging sites, sawmills, and secondary producers, and I would like to visit one-on-one with as many of you as possible. I also plan to attend several master logger classes this fall. I have already heard from everyone I have visited that hiring and retaining young talent is a huge issue. Therefore, as COVID restrictions are lifted, I will visit high school FFA clubs, 4-H clubs, and other agricultural programs for young people to talk about career opportunities. I will also attend career fairs. The statistics are very interesting and point to the fact that making contact with high school students and establishing natural resource and forestry related job skills training at the high school level could be very effective. For example, 81% of high school dropouts say relevant, real-world learning opportunities would have kept them in high school. In addition, it is very telling that only 33% of the available job openings require a 4-year degree, and yet 66% of high school graduates enroll in higher education. 56% of the available jobs require skilled employees. This shows the work we have before us to close the job skills gap. This is one of the initial program ideas I want to implement immediately. The new Green Jobs, Exploring Forest Careers curriculum from Project Learning Tree engages learners aged 12 to 25 in exploring green careers in forestry and conservation with hands-on, in-the-field activities. It is suitable for schools or youth programs such as FFA, 4-H, and Forestry Camp. To complement the Green Jobs activities, as well as be useful for other visits to high schools and career fairs, I would like to make a video library relevant to Tennessee by interviewing a variety of natural resource professionals and other people who work in the forest industry. A second program priority for 2021 is the design and implementation of a forestry career path certificate program at the high school level. Currently, Tennessee high schools have career path concentrations that count as credit for graduation. We would like to model a forestry credential program similar to the program in Alabama. In order to tailor this program to Tennessee, we will need some input from you, our members, to identify the knowledge base and skill sets that forest industry employers need in Tennessee. I am very excited about the opportunities that this grant in partnership with TDF and Alabama Forestry Association provides. I hope to talk and visit with many of you very soon. If you are open to a Forestry Works Tennessee video being filmed at your facility or establishment, please let me know. And please feel free to reach out to me or Candace at any time with your ideas or suggestions. Thank you.
Okay, we're good to go.
Okay, good morning. Live from Nashville, Tennessee, here at the TFA office. It's been a good morning. A lot of wet weather today for everybody, I think, but it's good to have all the speakers on. Appreciate everybody attending, and I hope you've all got something good out from our meeting today. Just want to remind you that if you've got a question, you can type it in the chat box, and we're looking into that live, and we've got a little bit of time for some questions. We have Adam Taylor, Ashley Gooden, David West, and Terry Fry on from our speaker today to help answer some of the questions. And so we'll start off. We have one question for Ashley. It says, what about switch type production? And I know you put an answer on the chat box, but maybe if you have a chance to go back over that for the people who didn't see it.
Sure, and again, I really appreciate the opportunity to speak today and present to y'all. So in terms of switch ties are a steady consumption in the rail tie industry, but it varies by railroad customers. So it depends on what their track maintenance program looks like in a given year. Overall, looking at our projections, and I looked these up during some of the other presentations, Class 1 railroads consume about 640,000 switch ties of all lengths over the course of a year. And then the second consumer group is our short lines and industrial customers, and they consume roughly another 120,000 ties. So you can look at 750,000 switch ties per year. Again, I can't stress enough, build the relationship with your tie buyers before their orders come in, and that way if you're interested in cutting switch ties, you have that relationship in place and will be ready to go when there's a demand for switch ties.
Thank you very much, Ashley, for the response.
Sure.
Our next question is for Trish, but I think Adam agreed to answer this question. It says why is it we see red oaks falling out of the stand at 100 years of age?
Yeah, I'm pleased to talk about this, although I can't resist the opportunity to pitch in a little bit of my own thoughts. That question was sparked by the presentation that was talking about carbon being stored in a red oak tree, and that red oak tree, if you leave it alone, might store that carbon for 500 years, and that's not normal for sure. A lot of our trees grow and die over a fairly short turnaround, and when they talk about the carbon market programs, they tend to measure the carbon not, of course, of a single tree, but of the whole stand. And if you're starting from an understocked stand or from a clear cut or something, you can expect the amount of carbon on the stand to generally increase even if an individual tree dies over that time. However, since I have the floor, I'm going to editorialize that I think there's a bit of a missed opportunity here in these carbon market programs to reward the wood industry, the wood that's harvested from the site, for its contribution to substituting for alternative products which themselves release a lot of carbon. So if you can use a wooden cross tie instead of using a steel or a concrete cross tie as one example, you are in a sense sequestering an enormous amount of carbon simply by keeping that carbon in the ground that you would have had to spend to make that steel or concrete. So as I understand it, the current carbon market systems don't reward forest harvest, but rather sort of indirectly penalize it by considering it a loss of carbon from the forest system. But that wasn't the question, but I just couldn't help but share my opinion on that one. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thanks, Adam. Your knowledge is always great to hear. So at this time, we don't have any more questions in our chat box, but would any of the panel like to have anything else to say today before we move on to the rest of our meeting? All right, if nobody else has any questions, if you end up having questions after this, you can email the TFA office, Candace, and we can get the questions out to our panel. I think we're going to move on now to our Harry Bledsoe will be in our nominating committee session. And thank you for everyone that's attended today.
President is Wayne Anthony. Hello to all my good friends at TFA. I hope you and your families are doing well. I am Harry Bledsoe, chairman of TFA's nominating committee. I'm submitting these names for TFA's 2020 and 2021 officers and board of directors to our membership for a vote of approval. Starting with the president. Our nomination for president is for a second term is Rob Kidd with Huber Engineered Woods. Nomination for first vice president is Wayne Anthony with Timberland Investment Resources. The East Tennessee vice president nomination is Sammy Woodfin with Evergreen Packaging. Middle Tennessee vice president is Larry Pitts. West Tennessee vice president nomination is Neil Carson with Packaging Corporation of America. And then finally, the treasurer, our nomination is Mike Witt. Also, I want to go over the board members' terms that are expiring in 2023. First of all, you have Alex Savage, I believe is a new board member with Savage Lumber Company in Doyle. Scott Stone with Canal Wood in Cleveland. Jackie Robbins with Thompson Machinery in Camden. Tommy Graham with Graham Holdings in Linden. Philip Hankins with Philip Hankins Logging in Pikeville. Drew Getty with Thompson Appalachian Hardwoods in Huntland, Tennessee. Kenneth Lynn with International Paper in Raleigh. Washburn with Power Equipment in Knoxville, Jim McAvoy with Land Mac in Sweetwater, Tennessee. One other board of director change that will occur this year is Michael Self with Sustainable Forest Management Incorporated in Cookeville. He will replace Michael Morris on the board with the term expiring 2021, since Michael Morris has recently moved out of the state. So after hearing these nominations, do I have a second? All in favor indicate with an aye. All opposed? Okay, thank you. And for a full list of TFA Board of Directors and ex officios, you can go to the www.tennesseeforestry.com. Thanks again.
I'd just like to wrap the meeting up today by saying a great big thank you to everyone who's helped make this virtual meeting possible. Thank you for all the speakers and all you did to prepare and organize and get us the information you provided and the knowledge you give us that we can use to make Tennessee forestry better in our state. Candace, I'd like to say thank you to you and your staff for what you did. I know it's been kind of an unusual year, and just through your knowledge and contacts and just your hard work through you and your staff have give us opportunities that we probably wouldn't even have got had not the coronavirus hit this year. So thank you for all you do. Thank you for the Department of Agriculture, Commissioner Hatcher and all your staff, the the Tennessee Division of Forestry and all your staff for your cooperation, coordination, and just partnerships that you provide to help forestry be better in our state. Thank you for all you do. I'm so proud of our programs that we've got going on, our elk duck watershed, our Tennessee teacher conservation workshops, PLT, our master logger program, our new workforce development program that we've undertaken, and just the new website that's come along. I'm just so thankful that we've had the opportunity to build a new website, and we want each and every one of you to take a look at it and see what kind of feedback you had, help us make it better, because it's your website. It's each and every one of you. And I thankful for every Tennessee Forestry Association member, all you do, your time, efforts, funding, just their calls, everything you do throughout the year to make Tennessee forestry better. I'm looking forward to 2021. We've got a few more things that we got to accomplish in 2020. We got some more meetings to attend. We've got board meetings, regional meetings. Look forward to seeing the ones that can come to those meetings. And then we look forward to hopefully getting to Chattanooga next year, and look forward to Tree Day in the spring at the Capitol. And I just want to wish each and every one of you a happy rest of the fall and the rest of this year, and look forward to seeing you all soon. Thank you.